Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tracy Nyer, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC. I'll be your facilitator for today's webinar. For those of you who are not familiar, the Virginia SBDC is the largest and most effective provider of customized counseling and education for small businesses in Virginia. Most of our services are offered locally in 28 locations throughout the Commonwealth. Today's webinar is one of our educational offerings and is part of our ongoing webinar series, Google and Beyond, Marketing and Managing on the Web. This series is designed to take a look at tools and techniques to help your small business take their business to the next level. Today's topic is how to create a content editorial calendar. All of our webinars are presented by Ray Sidney Smith, a web and mobile strategist, author of Solo Mo Success, Social Media, Local and Web Small Business Marketing Strategy Explained, and president of W3 Consulting. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type those into the question window, and Ray will do his best to answer them. Without further ado, here's Ray Sidney Smith.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you to the Virginia SBDC for having me here on the Beyond Google Marketing and Managing on the Web series. Just a couple of housekeeping items. If you have any questions, as Tracy said, you have the question panel. Please ask those questions, and Tracy will go ahead and either interrupt me throughout the presentation, and I'll be able to answer those if they're pertinent to the specific time frame, or we'll answer those at the end during Q&A, and I will leave a couple minutes at the end for question and answer. If you have any questions afterward, my email address will be on the final slide, and I will show that hopefully before we close out. And I also take questions by Twitter because I'm a Twitter fan, so at W3 Consulting, hashtag it Beyond Google, and I'll be happy to go ahead and answer those questions on Twitter. But like I said, you'll have my email address as well. Feel free to follow at Virginia SBDC. They publish, content about not only this program, but other programs and information about small business issues and resources, around the state to you. So feel free to follow them at Virginia SBDC again. Okay, so with that out of the way, our agenda for today is going to be, I'm just skipping across those other items, but the agenda for today is going to be, we're going to talk about the social media, local, and mobile web marketing framework that I developed in Solo Mo Success, the book that Tracy mentioned, and I'm just going to briefly go over that so people have an understanding of the background and so on and so forth, and I'll actually start us off with a little bit of time management discussion. We'll also then talk about how to create content efficiently in that process. And then finally, I'm going to walk us through the creation of content editorial calendars in several tools, giving you a couple of options and sort of on the fly creating these content editorial calendars. So you can see that it's actually not that difficult, but as well, some pointers to sort of think about as you make your way through creating them. I wanted to show you some of the potential pitfalls, but also some of the best practices, if you want to call that. I like to call them ideal practices for doing that. Then we'll have question and answer. Okay, so let's start off with a little bit of knowing your time. But before I go into that, I do want to say that most people are on here because they know they need a content editorial calendar. But if you don't know that you need a content editorial calendar, really this ends up being about consistency and time. We know that by marketing online through your blog, you are generating greater traffic to your blog and therefore your website. Website is where sales happen online, whether that be e-commerce sales or just people being aware of the fact that you sell a product or service. And so social media, is what it is, and a blog, any other content that you're creating online is typically social in the sense that people are able to engage with it. That is, they can comment and they can co-create content with you. And so the first step, of course, is knowing your time as it relates to it. The idea of a calendar is chronological, of course, and so we want to know how to engage and utilize the creation of an editorial calendar so that we're better able to gauge what's going to be happening, forecasting, but also to be able to reflect and review on the content that we've created so that we're better able to manifest better content in the future. Basically an iterative process, developing on top of what's been good, getting rid of what has been bad, and making it better. Okay? So knowing your time is really important, and how to spend it, of course. We discussed this in actually a prior webinar, the web-based productivity webinar that we presented here on this series. So I would highly recommend going out there and watching that as a sort of a basis for understanding how you spend your time and how you might be able to spend it better just in general as an entrepreneur, right? That's just really important. The other side to this is that if you're going to create an editorial calendar, most small businesses, especially if you're 1 to 10 people, in your company, as I am, most of the content editorial calendar falls on your shoulders in some way, shape, or form. And there are different ways to offload that time, but really a lot of it is you. You need to be able to understand how much content you can produce and how much content you can delegate to others to produce, and therefore know how much content you can produce at all. And this is most often, a big sort of cognitive dissonance, the piece between what you believe you can do and really what reality is, okay? And so I developed this this tutorial called the Unschedule. It comes from the work of Dr. Neil Fiore in his book, The Now Habit. And if you head over to that link on the page, it'll actually take you over to my personal website, and my personal website has a resources page where I have the video tutorial embedded. I think it's about 19 or 20 minutes, and it goes over this concept of the unschedule. What it is an ability for you to be able to look at your world, identify the time that is already taken. Most people don't take into account as an entrepreneur that you have to sleep, you have to eat, if you have to take the kids to school, you have to take the kids to school, all of those things that are already booked in your calendar. Students typically have this designed for them because they have a class schedule, right? So they're already booked in terms of where they have to be and when they have to be there. If you have a job, if you're employed, you typically have that time blocked out of your schedule, right? Because from whatever it is, 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, you are at your office working, and therefore that time is taken up. Now, if you're an entrepreneur, you really don't know what to do with that time. And so many times you just go with what's the latest and loudest issue. You just sort of, it's trial by fire. And that's not the best way to really be the executive of your life, better yet, your business. So the unschedule reverses that. And what I like to do is like to theme days of the week that are dedicated to particular types of things, and that way you can be more productive in all of those things. So check out the Unschedule. I think it's a really great methodology and highly flexible to be able to create one for you, because it's a very tailored sort of system, so that okay, this is what time I have available to me after all is said and done, after all of the things that I have to do, and how I'm going to take care of myself, what I call self-care. How do I get all those things done? And then in the time left, how am I going to block out that time so that it's useful to me and I'm still able to see clients or do the things that are necessary to make money, and still have a little bit of time left over for getting the business of business done as well. Okay, so check that out. This is what it looks like in sort of the demo mode, and you can see that there's different days that are dedicated to different things, and you block out periods of time, and then you can put in additional time things into it. So knowing your time, knowing how you spend your time is really the first step here when it comes to a content editorial calendar, because then you can see, okay, well, on Tuesday and Thursday mornings, I have an open block of time, and now I can block out those 2 or 3 hours that are going to be necessary for being able to get the editorial calendar executed, basically doing the work that's necessary to make the social media, whether that be the blog or YouTube or podcast or otherwise, get functioning and get the content out there. One thing that many people ask me is how much time does it really take? I'm just going to give you some highly generalized numbers here in terms of how you should really spend your time as it relates to producing, whether it be a blog or a podcast or YouTube and otherwise, okay? So first and foremost, you're going to spend at least 1 to 2 hours per month in sort of what I call planning and reviewing stage, okay? 1 hour likely planning out the future, whatever they be, blog posts or podcast episodes or YouTube videos. Planning those out is really going to be important because, without a plan, you really are flying blind, okay? And again, if you just keep dealing with the latest and loudest in your business, you're not going to be able to be consistent with regard to the blog or with regard to your podcast or otherwise. You really need to have that plan in place, and it's all about sort of herding sheep. You know, if you have your staff over here and your vendors over here and potential guest bloggers, you know, and potential guests on your podcast or potential guests on your YouTube channel, and nobody knows what the schedule or calendar is, well, how is everybody supposed to move in the same direction or toward the same goals? It's just really not possible. So planning is really important here, and the calendar is a part of that. So about an hour you're going to spend planning, usually in a team environment if you have multiple people working with you or for you, and then some level of review. That is, every month you should look at what happened. I mean, did people engage with the blog posts? Did you get a lot of comments on that Facebook post that you made? Did you, get a lot of engagements, or did a lot of people watch only 2 minutes of your YouTube video instead of the 10 minutes of the length of the video itself? Is that improvement over the last month? Maybe people only watched 1 minute of your videos last month, but they watched 2 minutes worth of your videos this month. Well, that's a 100% increase in engagement. That's a really great, metric increase. And so we need to analyze what you did well there so that you can repeat that in the future. So 1 to 2 hours. About 3 to 6 hours of your week is really in content production itself. You'll be spending that time either yourself creating that content, whether that be writing, drafting, blog posts, or scripting for your podcast, or outlining, discussing and communicating with guests, talking and researching with other folks, and getting all of that material together in some way, shape, or form. Depends on how much energy and how much research is required in the particular subject matter that you are creating content within, right? If you're the subject matter expert and you know soup to nuts everything about the topic that you're writing about, your blog posts might come very freely to you. But if you're writing in areas that are within a broader theme and you need to research those, then that's going to take you a little bit longer. So just as an FYI. And I also like to see what other people are writing about, and that typically helps me fill in gaps of where people might be missing information and providing more value there. So I also like to do a little bit of research, and that fills in that time frame as well, is looking at what other people have blogged about, or what other podcasts might be available, what other YouTube videos might be available, and saying, okay, well, what information did they give and what didn't they give, and can I provide that in this particular content piece? Or do I write a whole new content piece to fill in that gap so that I can gain that web traffic for it? Next up is basically 1 to 2 hours of administration and responding to people. Just in general, you're going to get, you're going to start to get people who are going to be commenting on your blog, maybe sending you emails through your contact form, asking you questions, and you need to spend and allot some time for that. So there's some admin responding time that you need to block out in your unschedule for that as well. So we're talking about minimum 5 hours, maybe up to 8 hours, which is literally a full workday that you need to budget into your calendar. And if you don't take that into account, and you feel like you have been recently, or just from the from the gate, you've been inconsistent with your your editorial, with your content production, this is probably why, is because you haven't allotted the amount of time really necessary. So you could put two 4-hour blocks in your schedule, Tuesday, Thursday morning, basically, 8 a.m. to noon. You put in, the time on those 2 days, or you can, you can say, I guess that's 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. That's 9, 10, 11, 12. No, 8 to noon would be 4 hours, right? So we have, you put the 4 hours on 2 days. You could say, 2 hours on 4 days. And that way it's a little bit more fungible. You can move those things around. And what's actually going to be done in them? What's the best and most appropriate time for me to be writing posts, or to be, drafting a particular script? Probably in the morning for me. Some people might be night owls, so you might decide you're going to put that in the late evening when the kids have gone to bed and you have some time to really work on those things. But be flexible and be understanding of your own circadian rhythm, so that you are aware of when are your high peak times for being able to do those things. Planning and reviewing probably doesn't require too much strong mental effort, so you might put that in a place where you have a little bit of, mind-wandering time, and your brain is not the, the sharpest. If you need to do some admin and responding time, again, that's probably going to be somewhere in the mid-range of middle-level energy. So, just find time in the schedule and the week to do that. Not everybody's schedule is as flexible, so you might be sort of more controlled. You might have more structure where you have to put things in particular periods, in which case you do the best you can with what you have. But you must have this time budgeted either in your calendar, in your task manager or project management system in some way, shape, or form, okay? And that's what the whole idea of the content editorial calendar is about, is now creating the structure so that we know these blocked times, right, are basically being filled in with the content work that's necessary in order to be able to be consistent and to produce high value content. Because the reality is that if someone is reading your blog and it's low quality content, you're just spinning your wheels, you're wasting your time, and that's not good for your business, and it's not good for you personally. It's unfulfilling. So with that in mind, I always like to start from the top in terms of strategy, and then we can talk about tactics. I just want to spend a few minutes talking about the SoloMo success strategy. SoloMo standing for social media, local web, and mobile web marketing strategy, okay? And the idea here is that you have to really engage on those three parts as a local, or a small business, driving local traffic. You really need to pay attention to those three pieces. For those of you who are capable of, satisfying nationwide clients, you still need to have a local strategy. So don't think that you can, take over the world in one piece. You really do need to understand local strategy, even if you are a small business that is satisfying a national or even global market, okay? So with that in mind, this is all about creating community, right? So your content editorial calendar is really focused on being able to drive community engagement. And so what is community? Community is a social construct, and it's sociological in nature, right? And we understand that community is based on three fundamental premises. That is that we give things to others, we get things from others, and we feel a sense of belonging to others. Now this happens in almost every context in life. I think every context in human sociology. That is, if we're in a group of people, whether that be your friend, your spouse or partner, your children, your church, your business, a community group doing some nonprofit work, whatever it might be, you are all in it to give, to get, and to feel a sense of belonging. And the more of each of those pieces that someone gets from it, and the more individuals that get all those three pieces satisfied, the stronger the community, right? The stronger the bonds, the stronger the community. This is a very fundamental premise. And so that's the premise on which I created the idea of SoloMo success. That if we are building community online, if we build stronger bonds, it's like a really strong spider web, right? It allows us to be able to capture the flow of traffic from these various sources and to be able to utilize those humans on the other end, right? Because all of this traffic, all of this interaction engagement is really about the other person on the other side. There is a human heart and mind on the other side of every communication. And if we really understand that, we can really truly start to build community and be successful in our social media, local, and mobile web marketing strategy. Okay? So community has three fundamental pieces, and SoloMo success has four, and I'll explain why. So the first one I called listening, and listening is really the idea of giving or engagement. Giving being the idea that you're going to go out there and seek out conversations, or you're going to notice conversations happening on your blog, or you're going to go out to Twitter and you're going to look for conversations happening about topics that are of pertinence to your business or to your industry or to your business, to your specific products and services. And you are going to engage with those people. It is giving because you are putting content not on your website but on somebody else's. And by producing more content on somebody else's, that increases their value to Google and the other search engines. People will go to those places, but in essence, they are seeing you in the conversation, and that provides value to everybody. Okay? So listening is the idea of going out there and giving to people, engaging with people, and so on and so forth. So that's listening. Next up is speaking. Speaking is the idea of getting traffic or getting something from people because you are putting content out there, So it seems a little bit counterintuitive, but by putting content on your website, by blogging or putting a resource on your website, or posting and so on and so forth, and syndicating those things out to Facebook and to Twitter and to LinkedIn and so on and so forth, you are actually driving traffic back to your website, right? So if you speak, you are blogging or podcasting or YouTubing, and you are getting people to come to your website by virtue of these marketing components, these marketing channels. So getting is the idea of speaking, getting your content out there, giving something of value, and getting the web traffic as an outgrowth, as a benefit of doing that. Next up is connecting. Connecting is creating a sense of belonging. How do we do that? Online, it's very simple. We go and we find people's needs and we connect them to people who have the ability to satisfy those needs. Because we can't always satisfy everybody's need, right? So if I'm a real estate agent, well, you know, I'm not also a home inspector, so if somebody needs a home inspector, people will frequently ask me as a realtor to go ahead and refer them to home inspectors. So if I have a home inspector in my you know, locality that is really good and I trust this person, then I can say to people on Twitter who are looking for a home inspector, when they tweet at me, hey, you know, I'm looking to buy a new home, I can say, hey, by the way, you know, you should meet, you know, Jill over here. Jill is a great home inspector. She'll be able to help you with that aspect of the business. By the way, here goes a really great plumber should you ever need them. If the person says, oh, you know what, I'm having a plumbing issue, you can say, oh, look at this. This is John. John is a plumber, and so on and so forth. By continually connecting the people in your world, you are strengthening their bonds to one another, but by virtue of that, you are inuring the benefit. You're creating the benefit of being able to make you better in their eyes, because now they owe you one, right? And they don't even know that they owe you one, but in essence they do, and they feel closer to you for it, because the more often that you are top of mind to them when they have a need or want, it means that when they have a need or want that you can sell to them, they're going to be more likely to buy your product or service. Okay, so connecting. So listening, speaking, and connecting. The fourth one is really measuring. And measuring is just because we're online, it's not something that we typically do. You know, I don't say, oh, I have 15 friends and, you know, they're the best people in the world. And, you know, I see my friends every week, you know, so I see my friends 52 times a week and do all kinds of quantifying of that data. We don't really do that in community, although we do know some metrics about, you know, people generally. Sociologically speaking, you know, people tend to have about 150 people in their world that they can know and trust, right? And that's just the reality of it. Some percentage of those people, you know, attend their funerals. We know a lot of information about people in terms of community, but we really don't track and measure that typically as individuals. As a business, though, we really do need to track and measure so that we can understand how we're doing and how to improve. And so measuring is a very important part and component of the social, you know, of Solomo sort of strategy, in the sense that we want to measure. We can use Google Analytics. It's a free tool. You set it up on your website, but you also connect that to any paid advertising, online advertising that you're using, social media, to email marketing, and to your website and blog. So you want to make sure that you connect that to all of those pieces. If you have a YouTube channel, you connect it to the YouTube channel. Facebook, you connect it to your Facebook. Google Analytics will actually show you your traffic that's coming from Facebook or Twitter or otherwise. So we want to really make sure that we're following along and paying attention to all of those things. Google Analytics even, you know, can capture mobile data, whether that be web app or a mobile application data. So we really want to pay attention to those measurements to be able to tell us what is going on and how can we use those insights in order to be better at listening, speaking, and connecting. Because the more we do and the better we do of listening, speaking, and connecting, obviously the better the business. Okay, so that's Solomo success in a nutshell. And so next up is really all about creating content efficiently. Now, when we're creating content efficiently, I have used for many years this idea that I've called brooded, because I'm a bit of an anxious person. So I spend a lot of time brooding over my content, right? That's a joke. But the point is that brooded is the mental image I get about wanting to create great content, right? Value is what I want to create. So brooding or brooded is the acronym I use for being able to remember that. And it stands for brainstorming, researching, organizing and outlining, drafting, editing, and disseminating. And I'll go over each one and how often you'll do them now. So the first one is brainstorming. So brooded, brainstorming. Brainstorm your ideas. This is going to be a once a month kind of item. And so once a month in your calendar, you can have a planning meeting, and it's going to be that hour that I talked about earlier. You're going to say, okay guys and gals, we're going to sit down for an hour and we're going to plan out the next month's blog post. Typically you're already preparing and doing this month's, so you're actually preparing for the month subsequent to that. So if it's January, you're actually planning for February now, not January, because you did January's in December. So we're always going forward into the future month, and so you might do some brainstorming for those kinds of things. You might decide that you want to do all of your brainstorming per quarter. So you might say, we're going to meet in December, and that will help us plan for January, February, March. And so you're going to actually brainstorm in that session your blog posts, your YouTube, your podcast, or whatnot for 3 months into the future, so that you are aggregating that time together into one particular session. And in that case, you might spend 90 minutes, 2 hours, maybe even 3 hours getting your blog posts all outlined for that. Some things that you want to think about when it comes to brainstorming are 1, themes, and 2, topics. 1, channels, 2, themes, and then 3 topics. So what do I mean by that? 1, channels are how you're going to be communicating out to the world, right? And so that could be a blog, as I said, podcast, YouTube videos. It could be through Facebook. It could be LinkedIn, and so on and so forth. Those are all channels that you're getting your communications out to. And in marketing, we want to have as few as possible, okay, that we are producing that content on, especially as a small business, because quite honestly, you don't have time to be spending producing content for 15 different social platforms and so on and so forth. You want to do as much work in one particular platform and then syndicate it out to the rest, which is why brooded ends in disseminate, which encompasses publishing and syndicating your content, because we're not only publishing our content on the native platform we're publishing, but then we also want to syndicate that out to the rest of the platforms that we're not actively engaged on. So we decide on channels, okay? Is it going to be a blog? Is it going to be podcast? Or is it going to be YouTube? And really, for the most part, for most small businesses who really want to affect and create solid web traffic, those are going to be your 3 options, okay? So it just can't be Facebook posting alone. It needs to be some mechanism for being able to, or tweeting alone, or LinkedIn posting alone. It can't be just one of those, what I call surface platforms, because those platforms are not your land in essence. Think of this in real estate again. You own your blog. Your blog is on your website, preferably, and you control what happens with that blog, okay, or with your website for that matter also. But with Facebook can shut off any feature tomorrow. It can shut off your Facebook page. It can do anything to you that it wants to. Okay, that's not the case with your blog or your podcast. To a lesser extent, obviously, with YouTube, but YouTube's not going away anytime soon. So I feel confident in saying that the 3 solid channels that you really want to pay attention to are a blog, a podcast, or a YouTube channel, and making sure that that content is your anchor content, is your base content, and then you're using that content to syndicate out to other networks. Okay, that doesn't mean that you don't curate content and you don't engage and do all those other things necessary on those other content, on those other platforms or channels where people that are following you are engaging with you. That's totally appropriate. But for sales, for making a profit, you need to draw people back to your website in some way, shape, or form, and most often than not, we're doing that through a blog, a podcast, and YouTube, okay? And there are many ways in which we do that in those different platforms, but those are the 3 mains. Okay, so we're going to brainstorm once a month or once a quarter and spend the time basically getting all of that content in order. Okay, next up we're going to research. This is usually dedicated and done either once a month or once a quarter. You or whoever you're going to dedicate to do this is going to basically go out there, look at the topics that have been brainstormed, And then you're going to brainstorm, you're going to identify the topics that you want to go ahead and publish, and typically you're doing a once a week blog, podcast episode, or YouTube video. Okay, so let's just consider that a standard once a week. That's 4 posts a month. You can do it more often in the beginning and then scale back. It depends on your industry, but you pay attention to how much traffic creates sales for you that are going to support your business, and that's how much content you have to create, right? I don't control what the market demands of you in terms of how much content needs to be created in order to be able to generate enough sales, and it's very industry specific and sometimes even locality specific. So if you have a highly competitive market of other carpet cleaners in your area, well, you might have to actually produce a little bit more content there than the average business would have to, because you're competing with maybe a couple of other strong dominant parties, especially if they have strong search engine optimization and you don't yet. So you have to be conscientious of the fact that you need to pay attention to both your financial numbers but also your engagement metrics to see how much of this work is actually producing real sales, and therefore how much content you have to create. Okay, so going forward, you're going to research once a month, once a quarter. You're just going to do the research on the topics that you've chosen, and you're going to go through and get those things done. Now, if you're doing this thematically, right, I talked about channels. If you're doing this thematically, you would research within those themes. So I'm just going to give an example. If my web hosting company decided to, W3C Web Services, if we decided to launch a blog, and I'll use this example throughout the rest of our discussion today. If we decided to launch a blog, we would probably have 3 different themes. We'd have social media marketing, we would have mobile web or app marketing, and we'd have local web optimization and marketing, right? Those are 3 basic categories. It fits in line with Solomo success, right? Social media, local and web marketing, and mobile marketing. So it makes a whole lot of sense that Solomo would fit the 3 categories or the 3 themes of the blog. Makes sense, right? And then we would then define individual topics, like how to create a content editorial calendar would be a topic we would fit under maybe social media marketing, right? So we would have that topic as 1 week's topic of the topics that we would have for the year. And so if we have 3 themes, and you can have as many themes as you want, but they would be broad categories, obviously. If we have 3 themes, that means if they're monthly, we have 4 topics about social media marketing, and we have 4 topics about web marketing, and then 4 topics about local web optimization. So if we have those 3 in rotation, every 3 months we're coming back to social media, every 3 months we're coming back to mobile web and app marketing, and every 3 months we're coming back to local web optimization and marketing. We could also change it up so that every week we have, every month we have 1 of each of those. So we have, week 1, social media, week 2, mobile web, week 3, local web, and then week 4, we start again with social media marketing. The problem with that is that if you have a series, say you write multiple blog posts or multiple podcasts in a row, then you can't really do series in that way, because then the schedule gets all kinds of wonky. So I like the idea of having themes where they fit one theme for a block of time, like a month, and then another month. That way, if you have multiple episode types of things, or multiple series types of blog posts, you can actually keep those together without it making without it making sort of looking illogical or nonsensical when you do those out. So I like to have a couple of blog themes, keep them on a monthly, and then rotate those themes monthly. Each of the topics then fit underneath that theme. So we want to go out there and research. So we can research all of our social media marketing topics, then we can research all of our mobile web app and mobile web marketing topics, and then we can search all of our local web optimization and marketing topics, and now we have that research stored in a database of some kind. We keep all of our data in Evernote, and we just basically have it all waiting for us in our Evernote notebook for those particular topics, and we actually will tag them the appropriate tag, and therefore they're there and waiting for us. All right, next up we organize an outline. Again, this is going to happen probably once a month or once a quarter. You're going to then decide on how you're going to organize and outline your posts, right? So if you're going to do it once a month, then in December, for January, you're going to go ahead at the beginning of December, you're going to go ahead and have your 4 blog posts that you're going to blog about, and you're going to take the topic, and then you're going to say, okay, what's the intro, what are the body points, and what's the closing? right? Just like high school English, you outline every post. What is its thesis statement? What's its core message? You're going to write that at the top. You're going to put your 3 bullet points, introduction, 3 bullet points, and a closing, and work from there. Obviously, you can get more creative if you're, depending upon your industry, and otherwise it'll have you sort of naturally outline based on all of those things, but it's a good sort of platform to start from. Okay, next up, drafting your content. And this happens daily. And this doesn't mean that you're writing a blog post every day. You're not cranking out 2,000 words a day and, doing Stephen King's output in terms of books. But you do need to write maybe 150 to 200 words daily. And I really do mean that you have to do this daily. If you are not producing content daily, and content production, also encompasses, some of the administrative stuff, which is, editing a guest blogger's post, making sure that you are interviewing, if you're interviewing someone for the podcast, recording your podcast, recording video, this is where that time is spent, and you have to do it daily, because if you don't do it daily, then something else will get in its way and you will just end up not doing it. Okay, and so a little bit of content production is really required on a daily basis. Okay, or if you're really structured and you can use the unschedule and you just decide every Tuesday and Thursday in that time frame, I'm going to spend that time doing that, that's okay also. Okay, and that's how I do it. I don't have every day, I don't produce blog content or, podcast content or otherwise. I record a podcast once a week and I do all of the work in that time frame. So I'm comfortable with that. Not everybody is. Okay, so if you're not comfortable with that, I tend to recommend that you start daily, and then you can make your way into a less often type of perspective. Okay, but you gotta, if you don't feel like you have the discipline, then you don't, and you should really stick to a daily schedule. And that way, when you come back to editing, right, brooded, B-R-O-O-D-E, edit, is time for review, reflecting, and redacting, okay, which is preparation for publication. So in that time frame, you're going to look at the content you wrote yesterday or last week, and you're going to go ahead and start to refine it so that it can get closer to being ready for publication. So every day you should really spend a little bit of time, say 30 minutes drafting content and 30 minutes editing prior content, right? Because you really can't draft and edit the same piece of content that you wrote today. Okay, you can draft what you wrote today, but you really should review, reflect, and redact what you did yesterday or last week or the prior couple of weeks, because your brain really takes some time to have it do some problem solving and cleaning up in the background, and then when you come back to it a couple days or even a week later, you're going to have a better view on what that content should really be doing, and possibly solving some problems you had with a quirky or an awkward phrase here, or maybe the outline didn't quite work and now you want to move around a couple of paragraphs after you've written them. And then finally, we disseminate. We go ahead and we schedule those items for publication, and then we schedule the things to be syndicated. I'm obviously a huge fan of Hootsuite, as I'm a Hootsuite Global Brand Ambassador, but there are many other scheduling tools. I'll talk about one of them in a short while. And so you can go ahead and disseminate or publish those kinds of things using those tools. And that usually happens once or twice a week. You're going to finish off a post. If you wrote a couple blog posts last week, you reviewed it on Monday. By Wednesday or Thursday, you can get it scheduled for the following week when it's supposed to go out. Make sense? So this gives you a very flexible system for being able to continually be moving on different pieces of content in a very logical fashion, so you're moving them along. And this may not make so much sense right now, but I'll show it to you in a more logical fashion when we get to the tools, which I'm about to do right now. So I'm going to take you into some of the tools, and like I said, I'm going to walk you through really briefly how to create the content editorial calendar in each of them, and that way you can sort of see what they look like and how you might be able to use them in your own business. So I'm going to go ahead and find my mouse here, and here we are. So the first one is Trello. Trello can be found at trello.com, Trello.com. It's like Jello, but Trello. And so Trello is a really great tool. It is usually known as a Kanban system, basically a list and or board-based system where you can create lists and then manage things in a visual flow perspective. And I have 2 templates here, and you can email me if you want access to any of these templates after the webinar. But the idea here is in Editorial 1, we use this actually with our blog network, the Small Business Blog Network, and so we have a network of several blogs that manage lots of content, and some of our bloggers want us to help them manage that editorial component, and so we have the editorial calendar here. This is the template that we use for it. So I'm just going to walk you very, very briefly through it. You're going to create a new board in Trello, and I'm not going to go over the inner workings of these tools, by the way. I just want to show you how the particular ones are, so that if you do use Trello, this is a sort of an addition to it, but if you don't use the tool, you will need to learn how to use the tool in order to make this happen. Okay, so here goes. In Editorial Calendar 1, which we use for the blog network, you can see here that we have set up the board based on milestones, very similar to Brooded, right? Brainstorm, research, edit, outline. Research, outline, and organize, then draft, edit, disseminate. We've basically broken up each of those milestones into the more granular pieces that are necessary for someone producing a blog post. So this could be used also for a podcast or a video channel, but this is what we've used. So we put articles here. So these are basically pitches, and people can add new ideas. So if you have a new idea as a blogger, you can come in here and you can put in here how to create a content editorial calendar, right? And so you've added it to the system, and now it's there. And now if at any point in the future you want to be able to take this idea and actually turn it into a real blog post, that's fine. All you need to do is move the card over to the next item. And so, forgive me a moment, I think I forgot the power cord on this, and we'll just fix that. So, so the idea here is that you are going to move the card for this particular item from column to column so that you can keep track of the post and all kinds of things within it. And in Trello, right, you can attach the actual blog post. So if you are writing the blog post in Google Drive, you can just attach the item in Google Drive, or you can attach the actual document right here, natively to it. You could put it in Dropbox, Box, OneDrive, otherwise, and just attach it to it. If you have any notes, if you want to mention, one of your staff members, if you want to delegate some component to it, you can do that all here. If you have to make edits, or say, if you're reviewing and you're thinking, oh, you know what, and I'd like to do a new sort of blog post on this other concept, but I'm not really ready yet to do that. You can make a comment here about it and then move it to the article ideas some point in the later. Okay, so so they move from column to column. Here I have article ideas, researching, organizing, and outline, and in each of these I've actually created these cards that are instruction cards, and they actually go over some of the things that we want to make sure every blogger knows when they're doing that. If you click on the full description, you can see here that outline that I told you about earlier. There it is. 1-sentence summary, introduction, your 3 body points, and then a summary or conclusion right there for you to be able to have available to you. So it's really easy. And this card, I've put a color on it, and just basically it's just there at the top of every, on the top of that list. So it's there, and each of the lists that need them have them at the top there, okay? And so if a post gets a little wonky and you're just not sure what's going on there, you put it on hold, and that way everybody knows there's something wrong with this post. Let's check in on it and see what's going on there. So if you see that you have a content producer, someone you have producing content for you, and it was in writing and then all of a sudden went on hold, well, maybe that's just because some part of your strategy or one of your techniques is not working. You put a campaign, a marketing campaign on hold, you just throw it there and on hold, and it can stay there. But now everybody can see that it's on hold, right? If someone's writing it or drafting that post, they can put it there and put it into the writing category. If it's finally in the editing graphics and under review process, if you have a review process, you can use that. If it's ready to publish, you put it there, and then whoever your syndicator is, the person who's technologically capable of scheduling your post and scheduling all the syndication in Hootsuite or whatever tool you're using, it goes there. And then last but not least, it goes into the scheduled items so that things are being scheduled, and there it goes. So it's ready to be scheduled. You do the promotion and syndication. After that happens, I like to have this here as an intermediary between that and published, because I like to know, okay, it's been scheduled, it's not yet been published. Once it has been published, we then move it to the published category, and we put that in chronological order. The reason for that is that typically at this point, you want to place the link, whether it be the short URL you've attached to it, maybe you're using Bitly or another tool or Hootsuite to create those short links, but also the native link to it so that you can reference it later. It's mind-boggling how difficult it is to find things when you need it. So especially if you're like, oh, you know what, I wrote that blog post about X and I can't remember, you know, where it is or what link, and you're searching on your blog for it and you're poking around. Here, it's all in one list. It's in chronological order. And if you ever need to search it, you can go ahead and just open up the card and search it. You know, you can open up this board, I'm sorry, and search it, and you can just type in the name of the topic of the blog. You can find a link to it, all the data that you have about that particular piece. You can even link back to your edits. Maybe you wrote like a paragraph in that blog post, but you really didn't use it. You know, you just decided that it was best for another blog post some other day. Well, now you can capture that content and use it at another time. So you can use this editorial calendar, one template for a milestone-based concept. Trello allows you to put in, what do you call it, deadlines, and you're also able to you know, assign cards to people, so you can actually see, you know, like this this one here, we can go ahead and say, okay, well, it's in writing and I'm supposed to be working on it, and so we can of course go ahead and tag me in this. And so there you can see that I'm assigned to this blog post, so you know who's writing it. So from a very quick glance, you can see who is writing these particular posts. Okay, so that's Editorial Calendar 1. Editorial Calendar 2 is this template, and again, like I said, just ask me and I'll be happy to share this with you. So, you know, this is the template every year of the content that we want to create, and what we do is in each one of these, we just have a checklist inside the card. So researching the topic, organizing, drafting, edit, and disseminating happens inside of each of these cards, and now instead the text is how to create a content editorial calendar, and in this particular case the card also tells us that this is a blog post because it's on W3's blog, W3B. It's a text post, and the title is how to create a content editorial calendar. If someone wants to be assigned something, then we go ahead and assign it just by putting in their username, and now we know that I have been tagged as the person who needs to research that topic. Okay, so you can do that as well right here within these cards. And again, we're managing not only the movement of the card, but we can attach it. We can put a due date on this. So we say, okay, we want to publish this on, this is January's blog post. So say we wanted to publish it on January 8th, 9th, there we go, we'd save it, and then we could see that it's on the calendar, and you can see that Trello even makes these things red when it's past due, so you know, oh gosh, this is, you know, past due, we need to deal with this particular milestone or this particular due date on this publishing of the post, okay? So you have lots of options here, and then you can decide, okay, well, we're going to have a text-based blog post, a video post, and a podcast each month. These are the ones we want to do, and that's how we're going to do it. Okay, and you can see that we do 2 webinars for Virginia SBDC. These topics go in here as well, and this is the template we use. We just copy it from year to year, and we put them into the system so that we can see what's going on in our world from a quick glance, and then move things if we need to. So if this text post is not going to happen this month, then it's going to move to another month. Okay? So that's Trello. The next one is Asana, and Asana is a project management software, and it's going to have to reload now. Right, so in the same example of W3C Web Services launching a blog, we would create a new project in Asana. So if you're familiar with Asana, you know that there are workspaces. Workspace in this case is W3C Web Services, and the project is going to be the social media or the content editorial calendar. Okay, so we're going to create a new project by clicking on the Create Project button here, and now we have a new project. Very similar to Trello, we have the concept of creating a board in Asana, and that's what we want to do. We don't want to use a list, we want to use a board so we can see this visually. So we're going to call this the content editorial calendar. And we can then, it's going to be published to W3C Web Services, and you can see here if you have a premium membership with Asana, you can use their template, their premium template called the editorial calendar, but generally I like to make my own. Anyway, I just accidentally close that out, but content editorial calendar. I'm going to click on board, and I then create the project. Okay, at that point, I can create my calendar columns, and what I'm going to do is just recreate what I did in terms of the Trello board. I'm going to do exactly what I did in Trello, right? I'm going to research, and then there's going to be a writing or drafting column. There's going to be an editing or review column, and then there's going to be a disseminate column, and then a published column if you want to cut out the scheduled column that I create. Okay, so there goes your 5 or 6 columns, and then you just create your first topic, right? How to create a content editorial calendar. And then all of the same things apply in the sense that you can have this card hold everything. You can attach the document from your computer, Dropbox, Google Drive, Box. You can assign this to someone, so you can assign it to, say, I want to assign it to Jeannie. I want to create this due date, right, and so on and so forth. And you just keep track of it. You can have all of your comments in here, and it's all managed here in this beautiful sort of board within Asana. Okay. There's also a social media editorial calendar that is produced by somebody on Templana, which is a template database for Asana, and so you can actually use this. This does not do this in boards. It does it in a list format, which I do not like, so I don't recommend it, but if you really want to see what this social media editorial calendar is, you can create it in a new project and sort of see what it looks like. It has 55 tasks, and you can see how they sort of have created it. Again, I like the idea of moving from board to board in milestone perspective, from either calendar, January, February, March, April, May, most people can understand that, or from a milestone perspective in terms of the actual project category, whether that be drafting, editing, reviewing, and those kinds of things. Okay, the next one is a tool called CoSchedule, and CoSchedule is not free. It is a tool that costs, at least as of the time of recording this, between $30 and up, so $30 for one user, and then I think $60 for 5 users per month. So, it is an investment, but it is a very, very flexible and strong tool. I'm not going to go into too much of it here. You can go to coschedule.com and learn about it, but it actually connects with WordPress, so you're able to not only use this interface on their website, but you can also actually utilize CoSchedule inside of the WordPress dashboard. So you're capable of seeing your entire marketing schedule that includes social media posts, blog posts, and otherwise in the same dashboard. It integrates with Evernote, it integrates obviously with WordPress because it's right there in the database, Google Docs, it's got a Chrome extension, Google Analytics, and then it has its own headline analyzer, and it works with these various social media networks, so the major social media networks. So really cool tool. It also has a function or feature called Requeue, which you can basically tag your best content, and then it will repost that content to your social media to recapture or to remarket those best posts to your social media to capture that additional traffic. Okay, next up is a tool called EditFlow. And EditFlow is actually the tool we are going to be adopting at W3 Consulting very soon, and which is why we've sort of been not blogging, but we are going to be resuming our blog, and as part of that, the resuming of our blog and our newsletter, we're going to be implementing EditFlow, and EditFlow works, again, it's a plugin within WordPress, it's free, and it's fantastic. What it allows you to do is to be able to have a calendar view of your content that are blog posts, and since for us, everything that we post is a blog post, whether that be a video, a podcast, or a blog post, they are all blog posts in essence on our blog, and so we want to be able to manage those in a visual capacity, and so this allows us to be able to do it. So we have a month-by-month view, we can control who sees what, and we can actually have editorial commentary happening along the way. So if you go to editflow.org, you can learn more about EditFlow, and it's there, and just so you can have an idea of what it looks like, this is what it looks like inside of our own blog, and you can see that we have this pitch, right? So we have this item that's called a pitch, and we've decided to go ahead and have this in our blog, and to create it, all you have to do is just click on the plus sign, and this creates a new posts. So we can say, since our theme is social media marketing, how to create a content editorial calendar will be the first blog post in May. And let's hop on over to second week in May. Let's say that Tuesday we want to put out a post of how to post a search engine optimized blog post, whatever. It's just a silly topic, right? We hit enter, and the blog post is now created, and now it is a draft blog post in our blog. Okay, so it's right there. Now say we decide, oh, you know what, we want to get this out actually on the 11th. All I have to do is drag and drop it, and now it's been rescheduled for the post to go out on the 11th. Okay, so we can actually visually see this. We know what status it is. In this case, it's a pitch. Okay, it's just an idea right now. Someone will be assigned to that blog post, and it's all done here using custom statuses. So EditFlow allows you to be able to have custom statuses. And so here we are. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 statuses within the blog because we don't need all the other statuses. But either way, we have a pitch, so we just throw ideas in here. So in our brainstorming meetings, on our planning meetings, we're just going to sit down and we're just going to get all those blog topics into here. And you can see that we can take a budget of the posts because here we have 2 posts. And they're there. Okay, we know that we have these waiting ideas. Once they've been pitched, then we'll assign them to somebody. Okay, and during the assigning process, that's when someone will actually go ahead and have research done. We'll organize an outline and do all these other things. Then it'll actually go into a draft status. That person will actually start writing it at some point, and then we'll know because EditFlow actually will trigger notifications to myself and others on the team to know that those posts are in a draft status. And you can see we currently keep a lot of posts in draft status, and those will actually go back to being just pitches until we've assigned them to everybody. Then they go into edit, which is this pending review, and then finally disseminate, where we have someone who will go ahead and SEO, optimize the blog posts and make sure graphics are in place, and then of course schedule it both here on the blog, but also via Hootsuite and the other social media tools that we have in channels. Okay, so those custom statuses, they're customizable, so you can change them how you want, and it's really helpful to be able to track and manage those things within a calendar view, and you can then on the blog post, which is not public to anyone else, you can comment. So you can write back and forth, oh, you know what, we really should look at paragraph 2 because some of that just doesn't really make much sense. There's an awkward phrase there, those kinds of things. And you can have that all managed and taken care of within the WordPress dashboard. So I really like EditFlow, and like I said, we're going to be implementing that in our own WordPress installation very soon to see if that will be a better tool for us than what we've been using in the past, which has been a Google Calendar. I mean, you can set this up in Google Calendar as well. Just create a new calendar called Content Editorial Calendar, and you can put the themes as all-day events across each month, and then each of the blog topics can show up as blog topics. So you can really do this and manifest this in any system. If you have any questions, like I said, you can feel free to email me after the webinar. I'll be happy to help. And with that, Tracy, do we have any questions? And I will put my email address on the final slide.
Ray, we don't have any questions right this second. Actually, they're coming in as we speak, so let's go ahead and answer those. I've heard that Hootsuite penalizes users because it's not active interaction. Is that true?
I am not sure what you mean by that. Whoever wrote the question, if you could just clarify what you mean by penalizing and not interactive. So,
Okay.
so just let me know what. Let me know. Just clarify, and I'll be happy to answer.
Okay, and then reach of message to users, less visibility is the clarification.
So again, there are multiple ways in which you can syndicate content through Hootsuite. For me, we use the RSS feed or the Atom feed syndication tool within Hootsuite for the blog posts. So those are actually not in the main scheduler. So they actually go in the gear icon area, the settings icon area, and when you're in there, you actually take your blog RSS feed and you put it in there, and then you tell it when I post a new blog post, I want it to go out to this social media channel, whether that be Twitter or LinkedIn or otherwise, and it automatically does that based on the parameters, whether that be auto-scheduling it or whatnot. So it sends that content out there and it allows it to be seen. That's what I mean by syndicating through Hootsuite. So any other sort of questions about Hootsuite, feel free to go ahead and any other questions about Hootsuite, feel free to email me and I can hopefully answer those. But as it relates to the editorial calendar and syndication, you're using that function. It's not really the manual function within Hootsuite for that.
Okay. The other question was, why did you move from Hootsuite to EditFlow?
So we're going to continue to use Hootsuite for social curation, for monitoring, and all kinds of other things. There's no question that Hootsuite is still the dominant player and our dominant use for that. We're just not capable of utilizing the WordPress plugin inside of Hootsuite. I stopped blogging because of it. It was just too much of a hassle. And so I need to get back into blogging for the business as opposed to for our clients, and the only way for me to do that is to really be inside of WordPress itself. EditFlow allows me to do that, and that allows me to be able to really access and use it better. For me, it was a workflow issue, and those little subtle changes as a just as a human, they affect me, and so I recognize that it did. And we've been planning for a long time to transition. We use EditFlow with the Small Business Blog Network, and so I thought, well, why don't we just use it for W3 Consulting, and that way we can get back to blogging as I want to do, and that's the plan. So Hootsuite's not going away in any way, shape, or form. It's just that we're not going to try and shove a square peg into a round hole with trying to use WordPress inside of Hootsuite. We're going to reverse that, where we actually handle the editorial calendar inside of WordPress for that and use Hootsuite for what it's best, which is scheduling social media posts and all those other things. I don't mind those being separated, whereas with CoSchedule merges those two pieces, so you can see your social posts and your blog posts or whatever within WordPress together. I don't particularly want to see all of that. I want to see them separated. And again, it's preferential. So every business is going to be different. Every user is going to be different in that sense.
In EditFlow, where do uncalendared items go?
So they won't show up in the calendar if there's no time frame associated with them. But if you have them uncalendared, you can use the story budget view. And in EditFlow, in the story budget view, those are actually categorized by either a label or a tag, a category or tag within WordPress, and you can actually see those assigned to whomever they're assigned to, and otherwise. So you can see those in the story budget area, but they're not shown in the calendar view, my understanding.
Okay. And then the last on the EditFlow, would you use EditFlow? Do you think you could use EditFlow without using Hootsuite?
No. I mean, because I need to keep track and manage all the various social channels, and I wouldn't be able to see the inbound social channels. There are other tools where you can pull your social media management into the WordPress dashboard, like CoSchedule, but I really don't want that. It's enough to make me not want to log into WordPress. I want to log into the blog and have a clean interface that's managing our base content production, right? The blog and our podcast and any YouTube videos that we're going to post to the blog, I want that to be the core of what's in WordPress. All the social media stuff, I'm not dealing with that. So I don't want to see it, and I want it separate. I want to be in content production mode in WordPress. And so for me, no, I would keep WordPress and Hootsuite separated for my own sanity.
Okay. Last question. Do you see podcasts as more than just brand marketing, i.e. an income generating opportunity for some brands?
Absolutely. So podcasting is nothing more than blogging with audio attached. So from a local marketing perspective, it handles the same functions as a blog, except that you get the additional benefit of being able to connect with people through their ears. You're speaking one-to-one with someone, just like I'm speaking to you right now. If you're listening to me, you can't be listening to anybody else, because then you've got fractured attention, and your brain doesn't do that very well. So podcasting is a mechanism for being able to connect one-to-one with people on a mass level, but still giving people a social media component, which is giving them the ability to comment and to engage with your content directly, and for you to be able to local optimize it. So now you can gain local web traffic or national web traffic or whatever kinds of traffic you want to optimize it for, but you can gain that traffic that you would with a blog, just utilizing an additional extension. So yes.
Okay. Thank you everyone for participating today. Today's webinar was recorded and it'll be posted on the Virginia SBDC website under live webinars and recordings. Tomorrow you'll be receiving a follow-up email on the webinar, and there'll be an evaluation link in the email. Please help us to continue to improve our training by taking time to fill out the evaluation. If you want to fill it out now, I posted that in the chat window. Our next webinar will be on April 20th, and it's Getting Small Business Marketing Exposure Using Live Video. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Ray, for participating today.